Welcome back to my channel for this week's Human Design Transit Report. Today is Monday, May 29th. And if you want to know what's going on right now, you should watch last week's transit report because that's where I talked about the current transit we're in right now. And then the new transit's going to start on Friday, June 2nd, which is what we're going to talk about the most today. Okay, let's go ahead and dive in. So taking a look at this chart, you'll see that there are two different channels that are defined. And the 4323, I'm not going to talk about a lot because the moon is lighting up the 43, which means it's only going to be here for a matter of hours before it moves on. So it's not all that relevant. But the 3536 is because the sun is lighting up the 35, and we have had Neptune lighting up the 36 for a long time. And so this is one that'll be important for this upcoming transit. Before we dive into that, let's take a look at the Earth in the gate 5, because we in the transit that we're in right now, we are in the logic circuit. Okay, and so the 5 is also in the logic circuit or the pattern circuit, and like the 9, which is where we are right now, the 5 is on the sacral center. So it is life force energy, and it is responsive, and it is known as patterns in traditional human design, or consistency, sometimes also known as rhythm. Its energy is related to the rhythms of the natural world. When the sun rises, when it sets, so the days, also the months, the seasons, the years, and all of those natural cycles, which for people around the world, for most of our existence, we're very attuned to. We had to pay attention to when it was going to get light, when it was going to get dark, when it was going to be hot, when it was going to be cold, when we could plant crops, and when we could harvest, when we needed to move to a new environment because the one that we're in now, it's too cold or too hot, so we have to go somewhere else. All of these different things that we paid attention to as more earth-based people, paying attention to what was going on in the natural world. And so we've got part of this just built into us for our survival, right? And so the 5 is about that energy. It's about the rhythms of the natural world. And it really supports us to, again, align with those rhythms of the natural world. With the advent of the technology that we have and has become ubiquitous, and certainly in the global north and Western cultures over the last 50 to 100 years, we have a 24/7, 365 society. Between electricity and the internet and all of the technology we have to cool or warm our homes and all of that, we've gotten very disconnected from the seasons by and large. We're out partying in the middle of winter when that's the time to be hibernating. I mean, Earth-based people did celebrate around the solstice because it was celebrating the return of life and a way to kind of remind oneself in the deep dark of winter that the spring's going to come, right? The sun's going to come back. And depending on how far north you were, that was a really important thing to be affirming for yourself because it could get pretty scary, right? But it wasn't like they were partying for months all the way through the winter. There was a lot of rest and restoration, a lot of time indoors, a lot of time mending things and creating things and telling stories and like that. But we've lost a lot of that, right? Because for us, in this kind of homogenized culture that we have, that modernity has created for us, is we've kind of lost some of the really key components that help us to remember that we are actually a part of the living world. We're not separate from it. We're actually a part of the living world, and that we do well when we're connected to the more than human world, because there are so many forms of consciousness in the living world that we have gotten really disconnected from, especially those of us who live in cities. I spent most of my life living in cities and, just had my little plot of land where I could, grow a few flowers, or if I was like a little bit of vegetables, or maybe had a little bit of grass, and sometimes didn't have any of that. Like when I lived in New York City, when I was teaching at Columbia, I was in an apartment building and I had nothing like that. Fortunately, I did have a park across the street and I had a great view of the park, but I just, I didn't have a piece of land that I was connecting to. So it's really important for us, I feel, and as part of the healing that we need in our world, for us to get reconnected again with the living world and with the rhythms of nature, so that we can remember really who we are as a species among many species. And in, among many indigenous people in the indigenous worldview, they see human beings as the youngest of species, and that we don't have anywhere near the wisdom or the longevity of plants, for example, and especially trees that have been here for much longer than we have, and know how to work cooperatively, and know how to always have plenty when you need it, know how to withdraw in the winter. If you're deciduous, drop your leaves, draw inside, right? And then how to come alive again in the spring. That's what the 5 is going to be supporting you with. So the earth is really inviting you to say, hey, what is your connection to the living world? What's your connection to these rhythms, right? And here we are, the beginning of June, here in the global north. This is, summer is coming full on, right? I mean, technically summer starts on the solstice, but it really, for me as an earth-based person, I think of it more starting at Beltane, which is May 1st. But, whatever your particular cosmology or orientation is, we're moving into the heat, right? And the longest days of the year, whereas in the global south, they're moving into winter. Significant winter, where they're pulling inside, and they are looking at, how do they manage this change of season? How do they stay warm? What do they need to do? Right. And all of that. So wherever you are in the world, I encourage you, and the earth is encouraging you to pay attention to that, to see what about the daylight. How much daylight do you have? How much heat or cold do you have? How can you align with what's going on in the living world outside of your home? How can you connect with what's happening with the trees and the plants and anything else, like whether it's rivers, like here, the river goes way high in the spring because of the snow melt. So, during this transit, the snow melt is high. The rivers are high. It changes a lot. Whereas in the winter, especially the beginning of the winter, the rivers are low because we haven't had rain for 5 or 6 months. And so the rivers get very low. So a lot of different things change over the course of the year. So this is just a great time to pay more attention, right? And I had the fortune to listen to Martin Shaw recently, who is a traditional storyteller. If you don't know him, I encourage you to check him out. And he said this wonderful phrase which is that we make things holy by the quality of our attention. And that is certainly the case for how we relate to the living world, right? We make it holy by giving it our attention. I certainly have a practice these days of connecting with the bees in my yard, inviting them here. I planted a bunch of flowers for them for food, and I spend a lot of time connecting with the bees because they are an endangered species. So where can you put some attention during this time on the living world and give your energy to something that you care about, some place in the landscape, whether that's a tree or a river or a meadow or a hill, or the bees, right? Whatever that is, and really honor it and allow yourself to also receive the kind of feedback that will come to you, the energetic expression that'll come back to you when you do that. In contrast, the sun is in the gate 35, and that is in the sensing circuit, which is right-brained energy, and it is a creative and experiential and embodied and expansive and spiritual, and it's a very different quality of energy than the logic circuit or the pattern circuit, which is where the 5 is, okay? And it is on the throat center. It's over here on the throat centers on the right side of the chart and left side of the body. And the 35 is known as change in traditional human design or experience in quantum human design. So the 35, and really this whole channel, the 35-36, is about our ability to really dive into experience. really allow ourselves to embody whatever it is that we're engaged in. To not be in our analytical mind, right? But to come into a different kind of intelligence that we have, which is connected to the living world, which is connected to the quantum field, if you will, or the great cosmic womb, as we call it in the yoga traditions, right? And so we do have this ability to feel outside of just this physical form in our own energy field, but also in the larger flow of life. And that's right-brained energy helps us to do that. So that 35 is inviting us to be able to expand that way and to have experience, to engage, to embody, to press out the borders of what we have experienced before, and to make new things possible for us as a result of that. Now, the challenge of the 35 is that it can get a little tired of experience. It can be a little bit jaded. It can be a little bit like, been there, done that. I don't know. Not so sure I want to do that again. And is there really anything important going on anyway? Unfortunately, a lot of what we have in terms of entertainment in our culture these days feeds that. Because, when you can go on Netflix or HBO or whatever your channel is of choice, and there are hundreds of things you can watch, and yet you go, and this happens to me because most of the stuff I'm not really interested in. I'll go in, I'll be like, no, I don't know. Most of this, no. I do find things that I want to engage in, but I'm very particular because I don't want to fill my consciousness with stuff that I think is crap. Right? And so I have to watch in myself about getting jaded, about getting like, done all this already, right? And instead to have more of a spirit of adventure, to be like, what is there? Right? What is there to engage in? But I think mostly that is not a mental exercise, right? It's an experiential and embodied exercise. And what we do on screens is largely not embodied and not experiential, unless whatever it is that's happening there is inviting you to have that kind of experience. I mean, I know, as I work with my clients and in my programs, I am very keen on experience and inviting people in and giving people a way to experience themselves and their bodies and their energy fields in the world around them in a different way than they are accustomed to. But a lot of the digital world is very passive, right? It's kind of passive entertainment. And so we don't want to go that way, right? Because that can fuel this kind of jadedness of like, okay, been there, done that, I don't really need to do that anymore. There's nothing for me to do, right? And then that 36, which Neptune has been in and keeps lighting up, right, is in traditional human design, it's like crisis, right? Because it can be a crisis of experience. It's emotional. It's on the emotional solar plexus, and it can be chaotic. It can be a little bit like all over the place, because it can be pursuing experience. Okay, it can be pursuing the next thing, but not actually enjoying or really participating or being present to the thing that it's in right now, because it's so focused on the next thing, right? The next thing. So you want to watch out for that if that's happening. And so the big kind of message here is how to fully embody so that you can have the best possible experience and to be present to the experience that you're having right now, to actually be paying attention and to be enjoying it, and to be getting out of it what you can get out of it, and to be providing and contributing in the way that you can, rather than kind of racing through it to get on to the next thing, or kind of being right? So that's really the invitation. And one of the things that's cool about this is that the 5, right, is also inviting you out into the natural world and connecting with the living world. And so even though it's in the logic circuit, which does tend to be more logical and analytical and strategic and all that, the 5 is kind of a different energy in that circuit. It is more about patterns. It is about the patterns of the natural world and how they change and how we align with them. And so when we have both of these together, you have the opportunity to be like, okay, I am going to fully experience and embody and be present to some activity, a walk, a hike, a sitting with your back against a tree, working in your garden, going to the ocean, whatever it is that you do, but you're completely there. You're completely there. And when you're there, you're breaking old patterns of the past that don't serve you anymore. Because we have so many patterns of being disassociated and disconnected and not present and not aware. And unfortunately, the digital world fosters that to a large degree. So, you have got your invitation for this particular transit. And if you haven't seen my invitation yet, I am inviting you to just check out a new program that I'm going to be offering in the summer through the fall. And it's about embodying your human design, activating it through your creativity and intuition, which are two primary ways of knowing in the human design system that are underutilized and underappreciated in Western culture, and yet are absolutely vital to our being. So I'm really excited about how this is coming together. And I do have a page the link will be down in the description. And with this particular page, there's nothing to buy. I'm not opening registration yet. That'll happen later in June. Or maybe early July, I'm not sure yet. And check it out. And I do invite you to give me your name and your email so I do know that you're interested. So as I create more events that are going to be letting you know about this direction that I'm taking in my work and what it is that I'm inviting you into, you'll be the first to know about that. And you will be the one, who will kind of be in the know, So I invite you to do that. And if it does interest you, I hope that you'll join us. All right. So just find that clickable link down below. All right. Many blessings. Much love.